So, Steve, you wrote a feature for our July issue of America's First Freedom on what happened in Boston after 1775, Lexington Concord. The British came out. Paul Revere, everyone knows that story. The British are coming. The British are coming. They came to get the colonists' guns. They came to take their guns away. They fought them back and pushed them back into Boston. Hoping you'll tell pieces of that story. I didn't even know the history, and I'm a history buff, especially
Yeah.
the Revolutionary War period.
It all really started in 1768, the first time the Brits came to occupy Boston. And so that was something unheard of for Englishmen, that you would have a military basically quartered among the population. And as the British were coming, the patriots, that'd be Sam Adams and some of his friends, were saying that basically the rumor is they're coming, they're going to take some of us back to England instead of having them tried here, trial by jury in America. They're going to disarm us. They're going to impose a military rule. And so everybody knows about the Boston Massacre, but things just kept getting worse. And, the Tea Party and all of that. So finally, the Lexington and Concord happened. The colonists were basically getting ready for what was going to come. So they were, every man had his gun. It might not have been a musket. It might have been a fowling piece. There were all kinds of guns. They were required to have arm themselves under the militia laws, but they were practical people. So I don't think most of their long guns had bayonet attaching devices, for example. So, but anyway, the Lexington and Concord happened. The first Lexington, the British are coming, and the famous statement that the British officer said something like, throw down your arms, you traitors, throw down your arms. And then a shot was fired. And who shot John or who fired first, we really don't know, but
Shot it around the world, but we don't know who shot it.
yeah,
Right.
it was shot. Yeah, heard around the world. All right. So then you had the British, pushed the colonists back. Then they went on to Concord, and at Concord, they destroyed a lot of the military stores. But then the militiamen were out, and they were having gun battles. And then the Brits decided, we're out of here, because there were too many militiamen coming in. And it wasn't just militiamen. There were women firing guns from houses. One woman shot some Brits, but then she was killed. They were using blunderbusses. All kinds of guns were in use. And so the British decided, we got to get out of here. But then the colonists, all down the road, all the way back, they kept going. They would fire at this point, go a little bit further up and fire at them again from behind stone walls and trees and things like that. Indian fighting, and the British really got whooped good. But it didn't end there, because in Boston, General Gage decided that, well, we can't trust these Bostonians. We want them to turn in their guns, but we have to give them some incentive.
The colonials stopped outside of Boston, but Boston itself was still controlled by the British.
Oh, yeah,
and
until
Gage.
1776. It wasn't retaken till then. So Gage was a very devious guy. Of course, you can't blame him for being, that all is fair in love and war, right? And so what he told the selectmen of Boston, that would be kind of like our city council. He said, we'll have an agreement where people who want to leave can leave Boston, but they have to turn in their guns to the selectmen. He didn't say to our troops. And so that was the agreement. And the day came. It was just a few days after April 19th, Lexington and Concord. And a lot of people turned their guns in. The selectmen or their officials wrote down the name, how many guns were turned in, and what they were. And for years, I was advised by the Massachusetts Historical Society. There was no list that was retained. But about a year or two ago, actually, I found the list. And so Paul Revere was on there, but that was Paul Revere Jr. His dad.
How did you find the list? Where did that come from?
It's in one of the really old publications, and it's online now.
Okay.
So there were, what was it, maybe 3,000 long guns, 600 pistols, maybe 30 or 40 blunderbusses. And that statistic we already knew from way back. But in terms of the names, that becomes really interesting. So Paul Revere Jr. stayed in Boston to take care of family affairs.
Paul Revere's son, right?
Yeah, the son. And so he turned in, I think it was 3 or 4 long guns. They would have been muskets or maybe fowling pieces. Maybe 3 handguns. I don't remember exactly. Most of the people on the list you never heard of, and you can't find anything about them on the internet. But there were some other people who turned in a good number of guns, and most people just turned in 1 gun. So 1 long gun, that is. And so that's fine. They turned them in at Faneuil Hall, the famous meeting place in Boston. And all of a sudden, when the day ended, the troops come, the British troops, and they seized the guns
That they collected, right?
Yeah, that they weren't supposed. That wasn't part of the deal. And the other thing was, once you turn your gun in, they were supposed to give you a pass so you could leave Boston. Everybody wanted to get out of Boston. You know, things were tight. It was military occupation. It was
It's basically a siege.
yeah, food was getting scarce. Most, except for maybe Tories, people wanted to leave. And so then, what does Gage do? They turn their guns in. Then they weren't giving passes out. And so the people in Boston were in a fix. And what do you do? So finally, some passes were given out, but then you weren't supposed to take merchandise out, but you could take personal belongings. But when people would try to leave with personal belongings, a lot of times that would be seized. And knowing how soldiers were then and maybe even now, a lot of that stuff was plundered. You know, they took their property, basically robbery.
Right, those soldiers were even quartered into people's homes at that time, which is why we have a Third Amendment to stop that.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of people got out, but then that summer in July, it was almost to a day to the Declaration of Independence date. It was not the 4th, but it was, I forgot, 2nd or 6th or something like that, of 1775. The Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Causes of Taking Up Arms, and it went through a lot of the grievances and why they thought they were vindicated to take up arms against the mother country, basically.
Right.
And there's one paragraph in there about the perfidy of Thomas Gage, the British commander of all the forces, and also he was the governor of Massachusetts colony. And it basically says they entered into this agreement, and then in violation of basic rules of honor and everything like that, they caused the arms to be seized, and that then they didn't let the people leave Boston. And so that was considered like, you know, we had this agreement with you, and they still were kind of acting like gentlemen with each other. And so he broke that basic agreement, and there's a lot of other grievances in there too, but that's the critical one. And then they also did an address to the people of Quebec. Our side was hoping maybe in Quebec, they were French, so they'd like to leave the British Empire too, but it didn't work out. But they had a similar clause there about what Gage had done in Boston. And so what do you think? Do you think the people got their guns back? What do you think?
No, I don't think they got their guns back.
No.
I know from your feature they did not get their guns
They
back.
did not get their guns back. So as is typical, you know, this is why we're against registration in this country.
Right.
You register the guns, they can take the guns. And so this was an example. This was a little bit more aggressive than registration because you turned them in to the civil authority, but then the military people seized them. And it was only the following year, 1776, that Boston was taken by the Patriots. The only thing left a lot of the guns were destroyed or they were scrapped. I think the British tried to destroy them all, but there were pieces left that could be used for repair for other guns.
Right.
And so there were some, you know, what we do when we're gun people, we always keep in parts, and even though the gun might not work, we might be able to use it on another gun.
Right.
And so as we know, at that time, a lot of guns were made from parts from all over the place, and so you could, oh, here's a lock I can take from this. The rest of the gun's destroyed, but then I can use it to repair some other gun.
Right. Yeah. Take a lathe, take a little piece off, make it fit.
Yeah,
What they
yeah,
would do.
yeah.
So the British fled Boston, went down, I think, to Long Island for their invasion of New York, right? But what I didn't realize, I mean, looking at this whole picture, I knew that the British went to Lexington Concord to seize guns. I knew it was about guns from the beginning. I didn't realize how much it was about gun control.
Yeah.
Look at what they did in Boston and what they said before this, see what they were going to do, that they wanted to take the arms away. And some of the quotes you have in this feature about them talking about taking the arms away from these people. I didn't realize our revolution, you could almost argue, started. One of the key issues, of course, is gun control.
Right, and if you think about it, okay, there was a battle that was fair in the sense that both were combatants. They shoot each other. They try to win and be victorious. But the people of Boston hadn't done anything. They were just civilians at that point. And so, okay, Gage thought, well, some of them are going to join the Patriots, and I can't have these armed people here. And that you can understand that. But from our point of view, it's like all I want to do is leave. And, you know, whether I'm taking a gun or not, whatever, just let me out of this place. And so one other thing about it, though, I've always thought this, you know, when they have gun buybacks, so-called here, people turn over their junk and keep the good stuff. And I'm convinced that a lot of the people kept the good stuff. And Gage thought that himself. There was one piece of correspondence where it said that he was suspicious that he didn't think they turned all the guns in. And, you know, the Bostonian official said, yeah, they're turned in. But I tell you what, if I was one of those patriots, I wouldn't turn it in unless I had something to get, you know, a piece of junk to get rid of.
No, I'd hide in the wall or wherever you could.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For a brighter day.
Yeah. That's one reason, I mean, among many others, why we have the Second Amendment. Throughout this whole period, the years leading up to that, you have confiscation of guns in certain contexts, and it was illegal. In fact, there might have been robbery charges against some soldiers who confiscated some guns leaving Boston because there's no warrant to do that. But Gage was getting pressure from England, from his superiors, the ministers, that you know, you really need to disarm these colonists. And Gage would write back, basically, it's easier said than done. Because if you think about it, when the colonies were settled, it was mandatory that everybody who was going to be a colonist, you had to have your gun. And so, they had no protection other than the people's militia. And there was an obligation, every able-bodied male, to be in the militia. And so if in the 1600s, like you can read the Massachusetts militia laws, and they were telling them what they have to get, and they have to come out and exercise in arms, and they have to be ready for attacks from maybe French or Dutch or whoever, Indians, you know, you name it. It was not a safe society necessarily, or criminals. There was no like professional law enforcement either, and you had to answer to the hue and cry. You know, if there's a robbery, all the able-bodied people got to chase the bad guy, capture them, and posse comitatus, all these institutions, and postulated that there would be an armed population. So,
well, if I could jump this forward to today, look at England now, mostly disarmed population. They're being put in jail for Facebook posts. That's where we've got. We're trying to keep our freedom here, and we largely are. Thanks to a strong NRA. And getting the truth out, such as you're doing here.
And in England, it didn't happen for a long time. Like as late as the 1870s, they passed their first law that about carrying guns. All you had to do was pay like about a very small fee at the post office.
Right, it's mostly post-World War I where they disarmed them.
Right, yeah. So that was the law. Before that, it was like you had to be equivalent to buying some stamps. It was like a tax on carrying, that's all. Yeah. But then after World War I, there's going to be a Bolshevik revolution like in Russia. And so you have these elites in England mistrusting the proletariat, the common people, the working class, and all of that. And so they just did it through decrees, not even parliamentary laws, that they started clamping down to the extent that by the time you get around to, I guess, in the 70s, is when they totally banned handguns, and that you have to get your shotgun certificate, and there's a lot of red tape you got to go through. You have to endure surprise inspections at your house, things like that. So, but then they call on us when they need them. And the one thing I've done a lot of research on is when they were under the threat of Nazi invasion, it was not only the Lend-Lease and our government programs, but it was many thousands of Americans contributed guns to a private society that were then exported to the Brits, and they were given out to people and to commercial places, businesses. And I actually found an archive about this where a lot of the correspondence between people, a lot of the Brits we even wrote back thanking
the
them.
NRA had a gun drive and sent so many
The
over.
NRA was part of that same operation. And one of the rifleman issues, it might be a full page, I'm not sure, where they were saying, give a gun to help the British.
Yes.
And so they were very active in that role, yes.
Well, thanks for all you do for us, for our freedom, and especially for our magazine. Thank you, Steve.
Glad to have the opportunity. It's always enjoyable. It's a great magazine.